Yeah, hi everybody. Dr. Jason W. Morrison, New South Wales, Australia, speaking on the subject of easily fooled. And I want to ask you, as we go on, how easily fooled are you? 1 Samuel, chapter 29, verse 1, and it's been a calamity, hasn't it? Oh my goodness. It gives you real good insights into what happens in the minds of people following the Lord. And there's been some massive changes in behaviour, hasn't there? It's been quite abusive, hasn't it? You've got David running around as a guerrilla, wiping out communities. Anyway, the Philistines reject David. Let's find out why. Then the Philistines gathered together all their armies at Aphek, and the Israelites encamped by the fountain which is in Jezreel. And the lords of the Philistines passed in review by hundreds and by thousands. But David and his men passed in review at the rear with Achish. Then the princes of the Philistines said, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" Now, just remember for a minute. If you don't fit in with the group, you are going to come under the spotlight. You are going to come under review. Have you ever felt like that? If you don't, even though you're an ally and probably not functioning the way that you should, these people know. They're watching. And then the princes of the Philistines said, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" How would you feel if somebody you thought believed in you turned around and said, "What are they doing here?" Or "What's he or she doing here?" Not very good, would you? And Achish said, well, this happens all the time, but you may not be aware of it. And Achish said to the princes of the Philistines, "Is this not David, the servant of King Saul of Israel, who has been with me these days, or these years? And to this day I have found no fault in him since he defected to me." Well, somebody had got wind of what he was doing, because he wasn't really doing what he was telling Achish. But the princes of the Philistines were angry with him. So the princes of the Philistines said to him, "Make this fellow return, that he may go back to the place which you appointed for him, and do not let him go down with us to battle, lest he in the battle become our adversary. For with what could he reconcile himself to his master, if not with the heads of these men? Is this not David, of whom they sang to one another in dances, saying, 'Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands'?" Then Achish called David and said to him, "Surely as the Lord lives, you have been upright, and your going out and your coming in with me in this army is good in my sight. For to this day I have not found evil in you since the day of your coming to me. Nevertheless, the Lords do not favour you. Therefore return now and go in peace, that you may not displease the lords of the Philistines." So David said to Achish, "But what have I done?" Now David knew very well what he had done. He'd wiped out a few communities that Achish wouldn't have agreed with. "And to this day, what have you found in your servant as long as I have been with you, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my Lord?" Now David had gotten to the point where he was prepared to go and fight against his own people. This is how crazy this all can get. This is how out of order it can all get. David was prepared to use the Philistines to wipe out Saul and his crew. He'd gotten to the point where he'd probably come up with no other way of doing it. And this is all because of Samuel not telling the people that Saul was rejected and that David was installed and anointed as king. Samuel he failed miserably. "And I know that you are as good in my sight as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the princes of the Philistines have said, 'He shall not go up with us to the battle.' Now therefore rise early in the morning with your master's servants who have come with you, and as soon as you are up early in the morning and have light, depart." So David and his men rose early to depart in the morning, to return to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. 1 Samuel chapter 30, David's conflict with the Amalekites. Now it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites invaded the south of Ziklag, attacked Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept, until they had no more power to weep. And David's 2 wives, Ahinoam, the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. Just want to say, Ahinoam's always first on the list. Abigail's second. Had been taken captive. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him. So now he's got a rebellion on his hands. Because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, please bring the ephod here to me. And Abiathar brought the ephod to David. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? And the Lord answered him, Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them without fail, and recover all. So David went, he and the 600 men who were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those stayed who were left behind. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook Besor. They found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David. And they gave him bread, and he ate, and they let him drink water, and gave him a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, To whom do you belong, and where are you from? And he said, I am a young man from Egypt, servant of an Amalekite, and master left behind me. And my master left me behind, because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Cherethites in the territory which belongs to Judah, and of the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, Can you take me down to this troop? So he said, Swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop. And when he brought him down, there they were, spread out all over the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Then David attacked them from twilight unto the evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. Now it's interesting, these guys didn't kill the people, but when David was getting around, he killed everything, except for the food and stuff, the livestock. He killed the women and the men and that. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and herds they had driven before those other livestock, and said, This is David's spoil. Now David came to the 200 men who had been so weary that they could not follow David, whom they also had made to stay at the brook Besor. So they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near the people, he greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless men of those who went with David answered and said, Because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except for every man's wife and children, and they may lead them away and depart. But David said, My brethren, you shall not do so with what the Lord has given us, who has preserved us and delivered into our hand the troop that came against us. For who will heed you in this matter? But as his part is who goes down to the battle, so shall his part be who stayed by the supplies. They shall share alike. So it was, from that day forward, he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. Now when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord, to those who are in Bethel, those who are in Ramoth of the south, those who are in Jitzer, those who are in Aroer, those who are in Ziphamoth, those who are in Eshtemar, those who are in Rachel, those who are in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, those who are in the cities of the Kenites. Oh, he's come back and helped the Kenites. Those who are in the Homar, those who are in Korashan, those who are in Athak, and those who are in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men had accustomed to rove. So he sent spoils out to make sure that everyone was going to Maybe it was an influential thing to keep people on side, but he did share, and he did spare the 200 that minded the supplies, and taught the other ones that, let's be fair here. And now the narrative changes as we go into chapter 21, the tragic end of Saul and his sons. And I just want to say, Saul and his sons should never have been left in this position. And again, I remind you that Samuel did not tell the people that Saul had been rejected and David accepted as king. And this is what happens when people are left in positions that they shouldn't be in, know they shouldn't be in, and refuse to resign. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. Now these are the guys that David was hanging out with. David would have been in this battle. Let me remind you, David would have been in this battle, but they rejected him from coming. And the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. Horrible battle. Then the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons. They knew who they wanted to take out. And the Philistines killed Jonathan. Horrible, isn't it? Abinadab and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The battle became fierce against Saul. Can you imagine the ferociousness and the horrificness of this? The archers hit him, and he was severely wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword, and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised men come and thrust me through and abuse me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. How many people, honestly, whether they be believers or not, religious people, in a spiritual sense, or a mental sense, or emotional sense, have taken their sword and fell on it because they were in a position that they should never have put themselves in? And it's hurt their children, they've lost their children, they've lost the loved ones. Jonathan, Abinadab and Malchishua, terribly, brutally, fiercely maimed. And Saul's taken his sword and fell on it. And his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, and he also fell on his sword. There's your ripple effect. It just affects everybody. Everybody's fallen on their swords and getting killed. And he died with him. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his men died together that same day. And when the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley, and those who were on the other side of the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled. And the Philistines came and dwelt in them. And so it happened the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain. Oh my goodness, they just come back and strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. And they cut off his head, and stripped off his armour, and sent word throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim in the temple of their idols and among the people. Then they put his armour in the temple of the Ashtoreths, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. Now when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and travelled all night, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan, and they came to Jabesh and burned them there. Then they took their bones and buried them under the teramax tree at Jabesh, where Saul used to stay, remember? And fasted 7 days. Saul fell on his sword. And on that note, thank you for listening. That's the last talk on this series. This is Dr. J.W. Morrison, very soberly saying thank you for listening, and bye for now. Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like. maybe even comment. If you watch it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.